On this video, my aim is to share with you what RenttoRent 2.0 is and 7 reasons why it's so powerful. Now, when I started, I didn't know about RenttoRent, okay? I knew that property was a good thing to do, but I didn't really have any knowledge whatsoever. I didn't have a huge amount of money. I literally was starting at ground zero, okay? And the only thing I knew how to do at that time was try and buy a property. So I sold my car, family ended up lending me a bit of money, and I managed to get my first purchase, 87 grand it was. I put a deposit down and that was great. I started making £600 a month and I was feeling like, yeah, this is great. This is what I was asking for. This is what I needed. I needed consistent income that relied on me, okay, and a legacy for my family. But then what happened was I ran out of money and I was like, what do I do now? And I did try deal sourcing, but the problem was I worked once, okay, I earned once. I did try stocks and shares, crypto and all these bits and bobs. But then when I found RenttoRent, I realized that it had the ability for me to get recurring cash flow. And then I thought, well, if I make enough, then I'll be able to reinvest in more assets. And that's what RenttoRent 2.0 is all about. So what is RenttoRent 2.0? So RenttoRent 2.0 is all about controlling assets. We're not owning them, not at the beginning at least. So what we do is we go out there and we identify properties that we think the landlord would be open to a long-term let. We guarantee their rent for 3 to 5 years. We typically take on all the management, not always the maintenance, but that's for another video, of the property. And we then are able to maybe SA the property, which is serviced accommodation. So taking a whole property and renting it on a night by night basis. Or we might split a larger property up into individual rooms or units and then cash flow those. So the typical premise is you're guaranteeing £1,000 worth of rent, you're generating £3,000 worth of income from your tenants, you pay say £500 for the bills, and the £1,500 in the middle is your profit, okay? It's your cash flow. And that is what RenttoRent 2.0 is all about. But after I was doing it and I was trialing it, I realized that it's actually way more than that. So what it's about is not going out and buying, stupid stuff with this cash flow or just sitting at home. It's actually reinvesting that into assets that you do own for the long term, for the legacy, for your family, okay? And ultimately so that you can do more of what you want to do with more of the people that you want to see. You don't want to be doing stuff to please people that you don't even like, right? It's not the one. So that's what RenttoRent 2.0 is all about. It's also about not just sticking to one strategy. So what I do is I do SA, I do student HMO, I do professional HMO, I do corporate company lets, I do construction company lets, okay? And then I even actually got different income streams such as property sourcing, property management, and all these things create RenttoRent 2.0, a massive strategy that can completely transform your life. But then another key thing that I've sort of improved upon, should we say, or upgraded from traditional rent-to-rent is a lot of people think rent-to-rent is no money down, okay? It's low money down. And yes, on the surface it is, but I don't want £1,000 a month. I don't want £2,000 a month and I still have money issues. I want massive cash flow. So my theory was, well, what happens if I don't start with £5,000, but I actually start with 50 grand? And I don't do one deal, but I do 10 deals. All of a sudden what happens is you end up generating multiple, I was going to say tens of thousands of pounds, which is true, but let's just say multiple for the time. But slow down. It's the basics. We don't want to go too fast too soon. So The idea is if you put a bigger chunk of cash, you can really scale up. One buy-to-let might make you £500 a month, okay? And it might cost you 50 grand. What happens if I put 50 grand into 10 rent-to-rents and I'm generating 5 grand or £10,000 a month? So that's RenttoRent 2.0. Creative Cash Flow Plus, I hope you're enjoying this content so far. Any questions you've got, please head over to Ask the Experts and put your questions in there. So now you know what RenttoRent 2.0 is. Let's talk about the why. Because I promise you now, you think you want to do rent-to-rent at the moment, but you really need to internalize that and decide and commit. And what I want you to do, this is one of your take-homes from this particular video, I want you to write these 7 key whys, and I want you to look at them every single day. And anytime somebody doubts you or you get a no from an agent or you're questioning this, I want you to come back to this video, to those 7 key points, and I want you to remember them because they really helped me when I started out. Number 1, cash flow. Yes, rent-to-rent is a cash flowing machine. And the reason for this is the return on investment is like no other. What other investment can you do where you invest £5,000 into something and over 5 years you generate 50? Because that's literally how it works. Let's use an example. Let's say you spend £5,000 on preparing the property, and for 5 years, that's 60 months, you generate £1,000 net per month. That's equal to £60,000. If you then minus the £5,000, and let's account for another £5,000 for any additional voids, you are generating £50,000 from an initial investment of £5,000. Where else can you do that? And the fact of the matter is, if you do this stuff right, you're not going to do one deal. You're going to do tens of deals, okay? And you're going to get massive cash flow. And I don't say this to brag, I say this because I am proud. We are hitting over £1 million of rent-to-rent income right now at the time of me recording this video. The next goal is £3 million. So they're the type of figures that we are talking about. Number 2, rent-to-rent is fast. And I'm not talking about get rich quick, but I am talking about get started quick, get cash flow quick. I'm currently doing a property purchase and I've been in legals for 6 months now, waiting around, okay? I had to find the deal. I had to offer on the deal. We had to instruct solicitors. We've had to order searchers. We've had to go back and forth with queries, okay? We've then had to do a survey. We've then had to do evaluation and go back and forth. The mortgage company have then said, actually, we think it's a down val, it's not worth that much. The vendor then decides, I'm not sure. In fact, I've had a situation where 4 months into the process, the seller actually drops out. So rent-to-rent, you could see a property today and have the keys by next week. So in terms of the speed, honestly, you cannot beat it. Number 3, it may not be no money. I don't always think it's low money because we're trying to scale, but it's definitely lower money. I'm doing a purchase at the moment, 86 grand for the deposit and stamp duty and fees, and another 85 grand on the refurb. We're talking nearly £200,000 for one deal that will generate £2,000 a month, okay? Rent-to-rent is not like that. I'm talking about, I see a property today, I offer tomorrow, I could have the keys next week and be cash flowing the week after. So in terms of speed, you cannot beat rent-to-rent. So a little recap, we've done the selfish ones, we've done we want the cash flow, we've done we want it fast, we've done we don't want to spend that much money on it. Number 4 is we're actually helping people. That little thing, like, being a good person, helping people, helping landlords in trouble, helping agents struggling, helping tenants, helping SA clients, even helping family members, that when you build a business, you can actually look after mums Or you can look after partner and say, oh, do you know what? Don't do that stressful thing. Come work with me. So one of my key motivators has been to help people. Okay? I don't want to bang you in, but I'm trying to get across this point. All of these 7 things are going to what keeps you going when you're struggling. So never ever forget, this is not just about you. This is about helping others. It's a real honorable cause if done correctly. Number 5 is you're building a business, a property business. And the great thing about building a business is that you are creating your own economy. You'll have employees, team members. You can employ family members and partners and help other people. Last point. But you're creating an equity for yourself that you control. My big issue with my last career was that I was always reliant on other people, you know, and you might be the same. Are you reliant on a boss? Are you reliant on not being made redundant, not being furloughed? Are you reliant on having to drop everything and stay in the office till 7 o'clock because your boss puts it on you? Are you reliant by the amount of holidays you can take and when you can take them? Well, guess what? Me and Lucy, we have a saying, we make the rules. So if you do this rent-to-rent business and you do it correctly, you can make your own rules. Number 6, often overlooked. Rent-to-rent, I believe, is actually low risk. Okay? You're probably thinking, it seems like it must be risky. I'm guaranteeing landlords rent. What happens if the tenants don't pay? What happens if the landlord wants the property back? What happens if there's issues with the legals? What happens if the boiler breaks? Yeah, but once you're educated and you know what you're doing, you know your stuff, you can protect yourself on those risks and the real major risks we avoid. I'm talking about a property market crash. If we don't own it, I don't mind what happens to the value of the properties, okay? I am talking about the boiler packing up. If you owned it, now you've got to find £3,000 from your family fund, from your holiday fund to replace the boiler. In rent to rent, we don't need to do that. We go to the landlord and it's the landlord's responsibility, okay? What happens if we need to exit the market for some reason quickly? Well, we don't own the property. If we owned it, it might take us up to a year to sell it and release our capital. In rent to rent, we can just give the property back within the remits of the agreement and move on. So it's low commitment for us. Once again, you need to have the right agreements, but it is low commitment. Okay. And another key thing is interest rates. With inflation and interest rates rising, once again, that's not our problem. We don't have a mortgage. We do cash flow. So for me, even though a lot of people, uneducated people, will try and tell you this stuff's wrong, it's risky. You're hearing it from me. This is not risky. It's actually lower risk. And finally, if you've not got any credit, if you're not mortgageable, okay? If you haven't got a massive lump sum and you live down in the south of England where property prices are expensive, don't worry, okay? Because you can still do rent to rent. You don't need a mortgage. Your credit doesn't need to be great. You don't need to have a ton of money. As long as you know the principles of RenttoRent 2.0, you can be successful. So I hope you're feeling pumped up. I hope you're feeling ready to get started and smash it. Remember the take home. Please write down the 7 key lessons here, okay? And internalize them so that you can overcome the no's, because that's what's going to need to happen. There will be no's until there's yeses. Hope you find this useful. I'll see you in the next video.